Hi guys, it's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi, and I'm back from England! Yay! Many, many more fun videos to come, plus shooting Voiceless Roar this upcoming weekend, Elaine's film, and then shooting Space Command in a few weeks, more of Great Solar War. Lots of adventures to come, and if you want to be part of any of it, markzickery@gmail.com. That's how you can be part of it, and among other ways, which we're going to get into now, because some of you know, many of you know, perhaps maybe none of you know, who knows? I had a career for many, many years in television, working for all the major studios and networks, writing for shows like Star Trek Next Gen, DS9, Babylon 5, Sliders, Friday the 13th series, Smurfs, He-Man, Super Friends, Real Ghostbusters, etc. And it was a very good career, and I enjoyed it, and I worked with great people. But as the new technology emerged, I thought there might be an alternative way of making television shows that would be a much more direct relationship between the audience and myself, without studio notes, without network notes to screw me over. Not that they did, by and large, but so many of my friends, they'll get on overall deals, these brilliant showrunners, these brilliant science fiction creators, and then they'll work for years on wonderful projects that never see the light of day because the studios decide not that they aren't wonderful, but just that they're not in the financial estimations of the studios or the networks. And then they just bury them, and you never get to see them, and they're wonderful. And I could speak of some of these, but I won't go into details. I won't name names or point fingers or any of that. But just know that the evolution essentially was that I worked all these years, all these, hundreds of hours of produced television, plus the books that I was writing at the same time, Magic Time, etc. And I've been running this roundtable of writers, directors, actors, producers for 30 years. And it meets in person and via Zoom every Thursday. If you want to be part of that, again, markzickery@gmail.com. It's a compassionate community in the entertainment industry. Anyone who's involved in TV, books, movies, starting out, very accomplished, everyone's treated the same. But I decided with Space Command, here was the evolution, all the TV stuff. And then after I was a writer-producer on Sliders and wrote for DS9 and all that stuff. I co-wrote with Michael Reeves, directed and executive produced an episode of Star Trek New Voyages, which was a fan project starring George Takei and the wonderful Christina Moses and Grace Lee Whitney, Yoan Rand, and Majel Barrett Roddenberry as the voice of the computer. And we did an episode of Star Trek totally not as part of the studio or networks. And I brought all my gifts that I developed over many, many decades in TV, and we stepped up to the plate, and I was enormously proud of what we accomplished. You can watch it right here on Mr. Sci-Fi. It's titled The Sulu Series We Never Got, and it's the entire pilot. It's over an hour, and George Takei's wonderful in it. Everyone's wonderful in it, and I'm very proud. It was nominated for the Hugo and the Nebula Awards, and it won the TV Guide Award, beating out Battlestar Galactica, so, very, very cool. But what I saw was that the networks and studios were no longer the only game in town, that you could do something totally with people from the internet, totally with fans and some professionals, and you could release it on the internet. It could be seen by as many people as we're seeing, Enterprise on UPN or whatever, and there was now an alternative way of making quality television. And I thought, that's great. So the only piece missing was raising the money, because with Star Trek New Voyages, we knew going in that we couldn't sell it. We couldn't. There was no way for it to generate profits. So that's when I came up with the idea for Space Command, because I wanted to do something inspiring. I wanted to do something that would be a hopeful vision of the future, like Star Trek had been for me, and for so many millions, if not billions, of other people. And I didn't want to have my I didn't want to be cut off at the knees. I didn't want to put in all the effort of making a wonderful thing to share with the world and then have some studio goofball, pull the plug, pull out the rug from under me. So I reached out to my audience, never raised money before. And as many of you know, I subsequently have raised over $4 million, and now I'm raising an additional 20. And the way I did it was through ongoing Kickstarter campaigns, and we are looking for someone to run our Kickstarter campaigns if you have experience, but also through selling investment shares in Space Command. Now, my method, ever since I wrote this, the Twilight Zone Companion, when I was in my early 20s, I always choose a project that's absolutely impossible to pull off, and then I pull it off, and then I choose something even more difficult and pull that off, and so forth. So it's been a great way to work. And so all the time I was doing Space Command, and now we're shooting hours 7 and 8 of the 12-hour season, so it's going along great. And we have our own studio, three sound stages here in Los Angeles, full of spaceships and aliens and giant robots and spacesuits, and it's just great, just great. I had another plan, a bigger plan, because once I could demonstrate that we can make a show comparable to a network show with great name actors like Doug Jones, Robert Picardo, Bill Mumy, etc., that James Hong, and so on, that we could go toe-to-toe with what was being made by the studios and the networks. And the next step was to then do the Showrunners Network, where I would be creating 5 series with some of my friends who have created the greatest science fiction shows of the last several decades, creators of The Expanse, showrunners of The Expanse, creators of Farscape, Alienation, Sequest, Defiance, executive producers of Evil, the TV show Evil, and directors from Battlestar Galactica, on and on, and that would work, that it would totally work. And so now we've been selling shares in Space Command. Now we're selling shares in Showrunners Network. And I thought it would be interesting to, normally I send updates to my investors. I just send an update email to them, and then sometimes I send videos to them, updating them as to what we're doing and how they can continue to participate. And it occurred to me that it might be fun to show you how I do what I do, because many people feel very blocked, that they can't get their books written, their projects made, their movies filmed, whatever. And now there really is no excuse. It used to be that if you didn't have millions of dollars, you couldn't do this stuff. Now it's totally possible. And it's interesting because the 2 books I would read, if you want to have a career in film and TV and books, like I have, first read The Twilight Zone Companion. The reason I wrote this book was when I got out of college, there were no classes in how to write and direct TV, write and produce TV. There was nothing. And so I decided that to learn what I needed to learn, because I knew by then I wanted to be a writer, producer in TV. I was like 21 years old. If I wrote a book about one of the greatest shows ever made, if not the greatest show ever made, that I would learn how to make great television, and I could apply those lessons. And that's exactly what worked and what happened. I started writing The Twilight Zone Companion when I was 21. And by the time I was 22 or 23, I was writing for television, and meantime, continuing to write The Twilight Zone Companion. It's been in print ever since. It's in its 3rd edition now. So if you have the first and second editions, get the 3rd one. It's 100 pages longer, 500 new photos, links to audio and video, all sorts of cool stuff. I highly recommend my book. Yes, buy my book. And you'll find many, many lessons about how to do these things that I applied to give myself a career. But now recently, in creating this new model, where I don't have a studio, don't have a network, but I have my own studio, essentially, I decided to share that with the audience as well, because it's like a cookbook. It's a cookbook, to quote The Twilight Zone. It's really something that you can follow step by step. You don't have to be me to do it. In fact, if you're not me, that's fine. But there are things I figured out that make it very, very possible. So this is the book I recently wrote, Greenlighting Yourself, and I highly recommend that as well, because it goes into everything: making money, getting representation, continuing on from failure, how to deal with rejection, how to deal with success, and how to have a long-term career in film, TV, books, whatever. So I recommend that. Both of these books are available on Amazon, and again, this one is Greenlighting Yourself, and this one is Twilight Zone Companion. This is the cover of the 3rd edition, and both are published by Silman James, who has been very, very, very good to me over all these years. Twilight Zone Companion has sold over 500,000 copies and still going strong. So that's that. But so now let's pretend that you're one of my investors, and let me open this up to get to the information that I just sent them. And I will pitch this to you just like I'm pitching to my investors. And you will get to be a fly on the wall between me and my investors. And then, maybe we'll do a live Mr. Sci-Fi sometime soon, so you can ask follow-up questions, because I'm sure there will be many, many, many. But it is, I'm very glad to show this stuff, because what I discovered was that total transparency with your audience is an enormous plus. I enjoy it. First of all, I enjoy it. I love talking to you guys. I love meeting people at conventions. Or just the other day, I was at a restaurant, and a guy who's a writer producer from The Boys and other TV shows came up to me. He said, "You're Mr. Sci-Fi, and I love what you're doing on Mr. Sci-Fi." That's great. I love that. Okay, so here we go. So imagine, if you will, in the words of Rod Serling, imagine, if you will, here's me pitching to my investors. This is the update for November 2024 to my investors. So here we go. Okay, so hi guys, it's Mark Zickrey. Thanks for everything you've done so far. We really appreciate it. We couldn't be here without you, and wanted to give you an update and let you know where things are, and how you can be be more of a part of it, and what's going to happen moving forward. So, as you know, we just shot 3 days on Elaine's feature, The Voiceless Roar. We shot 3 or 4 days on Space Command recently, and it all went great. We're in post-production on all that stuff, and we're ramping up to shoot more. Our goal is to shoot every single month, ongoing. So the goal this upcoming year is to finish the 12 seasons of Space Command. We already have a distributor who's expressed interest in picking up the entire season, and then shoot all 5 two-hour pilots and of the Showrunners Network, plus Elaine's film, The Voiceless Roar, which is also part of the Showrunners Network. So let's get into all of this and talk about it. So, as you know, we just got back from a wonderful 3 weeks in the UK. Among other things, we had meetings with several actors and a director. It was mainly a vacation, but the opportunities to build relationships and build connections was there, and we took it. So we met at Soho House, which is sort of the cool hangout place in London for industry professionals. We had 2 lunches there. One was with Christina Chong, the wonderful actress from Strange New World. She plays La'an, and she was also on Doctor Who. And we're now going to let her shoot at our studio for free, shoot any shorts she wants to make, or proofs of concept. We're offering that to all the Star Trek leads from all the different Star Trek series, and B5, and the people we love working with. And but meantime, we're looking for a role for Christina in what we're doing, and I think that will come to fruition. We had a great lunch. We really hit it off. She brought her little poodle. It was great. Meantime, we also met with Stephen Hopkins, who was executive producer and director of 24, and also directed Predator 2 and many other film and TV projects. He's now attached to the project we've been doing with Lord Peter Hain, who's a member of Parliament in England. His family were huge anti-apartheid activists, and Elaine has written the first 2 hours of a 4-hour miniseries called Subversive about that takes place both in South Africa and in England, and he's now aboard that project as a director, and we're producing it as well. So but we also gave him a project that's part of the Showrunners Network called Marigold, and we'll get into that as we continue talking. But wanted to let you know that a lot's in motion, and it's great. And people often ask me, well, how do you do all this stuff? Do you ever sleep? And yes, I do sleep, thank God. But coming up in television, you're trained to multitask. So for instance, when I was writing for animation, I might be writing, on a given week, I might be writing a He-Man script, outlining a Smurf episode, working on a pitch for Real Ghostbusters, working on the Twilight Zone companion, writing that. I was going always between multiple projects. And then when I jumped up to being a writer-producer in live TV and live action television, for instance, when I was a producer on Sliders, I would be writing an episode of Sliders, listening to pitches, giving notes on a cut of a previous episode as they're editing it, being in on auditions with actors for forthcoming episodes. I was outlining all the episodes of Animorphs and writing several sample scripts, 4 or 5 scripts for that at the same time, all at the same time, and also working on the first Magic Time novel, which I was co-writing with Barbara Hambly, and outlining the second Magic Time novel with Maya Bonhoff. Plus, I outlined the Deep Space Nine episode that I sold to DS9, Far Beyond the Stars. I was doing that all at the same time, and that was sort of comes with the job. I mean, it's what you do, and so this has served me very well in writing books and writing scripts and making shows now, and so it's second nature. I love it. I love it. So we got back from the UK, had a great time, And now what's happening now is, as you know, for many years we've been selling shares in Space Command at $7,500 each, where you get a share of my producer's net profits. And we've been selling them in blocks of 4 episodes, because there's a 12-episode season. So the first offering was in the first 4 episodes of Space Command. Second offering was in the second 4 episodes. Final offering is in the final 4 episodes of season 1. Happy to send you the updated PPM, which is the project placement memorandum, whatever it's called. It basically gives you all the warnings about, oh my God, you'll lose all your money, as you know, and haven't lost all your money yet. And we're actually starting to turn profits, because the first 2 hours of Space Command are now being released by Indie Rights. They're available for rental or purchase on Amazon Prime and Google Play, available to watch on Tubi with commercials, and it's starting to generate revenues. Not the huge revenues that we hope to see once the season is done, but proof that people will watch Space Command, will pay for it, are really loving what they're seeing. So that's all very good. That's sort of like a trial run. And we'll be cutting checks for our investors, for you guys. They won't be huge, but again, they'll be proof that profits are coming. And very exciting. So we've been selling those shares for $7,500 each. There are still shares in Space Command left. This will be the property that brings back revenue the soonest. Now, again, it's a long-term project. It's a long-term proposal. So again, most of our investors are in this because they love what we're doing and what we stand for. They want to be part of something that can change the world for the better. And again, it's not political. We invite people from all sides of the political spectrum. If you want a better future for your kids and grandkids, if you want safety and medical care and health and everyone having a good life, and and you're tired of shouting matches, you want to meet in the middle with the shared goal of compassion and building something, compassion put into action. And that's something, if you see the human race as the human race, and you see all of us together in this, we can get a lot done. And so I'm not at all interested in proving my political point or any of that nonsense. The next 4 years will be whatever they're going to be, but I am here to create positive good in the world, and my weapon of choice is television series, because they reach millions of people, billions of people in some cases, and I know that I was changed far for the better by Star Trek, Twilight Zone, the original Outer Limits. These are the shows that made me who I am, and they were not made by cynics. They were not made by fatalists. The message over and over in all 3 of those great shows, and if you haven't seen the original versions, please seek them out. The message was, we can survive, we can succeed, we can make a world worth living in if we just reach across boundaries and barriers, and with love, with compassion, and with a willingness to roll up our sleeves and get some work done. So that's the thing. And so we are selling more shares in Space Command. You can absolutely buy them. Most of our investors buy multiple shares, and that's absolutely fine. And we can make it work for you. It's, as I say, it's $7,500 per share. I deliberately set it at a low cost so that it wouldn't just be millionaires and billionaires who could buy shares in Space Command, though we do have some of those, but it would also be like guys who drive trucks, or people who, are farmers, or whatever, because I wanted it to be, as Space Command is inclusive and as my roundtable is inclusive, I wanted investing in Space Command to be inclusive. So when people express interest in wanting to buy shares, we send them the PPM, which has all the warnings, because you're required by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, to have all the warnings. You're going to lose your shirt. You're going to have the frogs will rain from the skies, whatever, But then there's just a 1-page document, the subscription agreement, that you sign. You indicate how many shares of Space Command you're buying, and that's it. And you send that back to me. Send us the money via PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, or we give you the account information and just deposit it in the Wells Fargo Space Command LLC account. Again, it's never in my personal account. This is not my money that I'm raising. This is Space Command. This is to make the show, and and to pay the rent on the studio, and hire our editors and DP and all of that stuff. So that's the scoop with that. So we're shooting Space Command, and it's going great, and you're welcome to come to the set and be part of it, and even put on a spacesuit, and we'll turn a camera on you, and it's swell. And but meantime, what's been lying in wait is the Showrunners Network, and now we're offering shares for $7,500 in the Showrunners Network as well, and that covers 5 2-hour science fiction pilots that we're doing, plus Elaine's feature, a portion of our net profits in those. And basically, we take the profits, half goes to us, half goes to you guys. It's actually a 70-30 split until you get back 120% of your investment. So it's 70% your way, 30% for us. So it's actually a really good deal. And but with the Showrunners Network, as I mentioned, with Space Command, we were selling 3 blocks of 200 shares each to cover the cost of making Space Command when you combine that with our Kickstarter revenue. But with the Showrunners Network, because we're doing 5 2-hour pilots and a feature, we're raising $20 million to that purpose. And so we're offering 2,800 shares in the Showrunners Network for $7,500 each. The plus side, though, is that it's 5 series and a feature. So if any of those hit big, it's like, having a share of Star Trek or any of these franchises, Star Wars. Can you imagine? A friend of mine actually had the T-shirt concession on Star Wars back in '77, and finally George Lucas just said, "Look, I have to buy that back from you." But for a while he was doing really well, and but the point being, it increases the chances of hitting the jackpot. But with Space Command, the reason to invest in Space Command and why I'm urging people to buy both is because Space Command, we're going to be done with the first season much sooner, and I think it'll just be, once that season is done, it'll just be like a little machine chugging along, generating money, and so that's all to the good. So those are the things. But let me tell you a little bit about. Let's see. I'm going through the notes through what I sent them. Yeah, so, and with the Showrunners Network, it's exactly the same. I send you the PPM, the project placement memorandum, and then the subscription agreement. It's exactly the same deal. You sign the one-page agreement, you say how many shares you're buying, bang, comes to me, and you send the money, and boom, we're good to go. And we treat our investors very, very well, as you know. We'll, you're always welcome on the set. You're always welcome to be part of it. If you want to play a little role, you can. We bring our investors to Comic-Con or any of the other big conventions. Take our investors out to dinner. Happy to talk to them. They have my personal number and my email, and I just love hearing from you guys. I just love having it be an ongoing friendship, because the great part, because I'm a social animal, because I like people, and there's room at the table for everyone. I don't come from scarcity. I don't assume that someone else's success means that I'll fail. I cheer for other people's successes, and but what that means is that thanks to this process, I've made so many more friends than I would have had otherwise. I don't have any friends who are studio or network executives. It doesn't, that's never been my goal. And I don't hang out with movie stars, or I'm not part of the Hollywood scene. Never have been. Don't want to be. But I've met so many wonderful people via Space Command, via selling shares, people who I never would have met otherwise, people all around the world, not just in the States, but I'm regularly talking to friends of mine who are our investors, who are part of Space Command, and now they're going to be part of the Showrunners Network. Now, let me tell you about the Showrunners Network, because it is different. The scripts are written. We're ready to go. We're creating an ensemble of actors. So the actors who are in Space Command that you see in Space Command, Ethan McDowell, Robert Picardo, Doug Jones, the great Barbara Bain, many, many others to come, Veronica Cartwright, Gates McFadden, James Hong, George Takei, Francois Chow from The Expanse and Batman, many wonderful actors. Kirsten, whatever her name is, she played Judy in the original Lost in Space. More and more. Ethan Phillips, Ethan McDowell from The Walking Dead, who plays Captain Kemmer. We're creating an ensemble where they're going to be in all these different projects in different kinds of roles, and so that's very, 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 very fun for us. And we'll be bringing more people in, and so Christina Chong and so forth. I'm talking to David Ajala from Star Trek Discovery and Night Flyers. These are wonderful actors. So the Showrunners Network. Here's how it works. In the old days, they used to have something called a 2-hour backdoor pilot, and those were 2-hour pilots that could be marketed as features, but also could sell as series. And so if they didn't sell a series, they could still generate profits as movies. If they sold a series, they could be marketed overseas as features, but also generate revenue. So it was a really great idea, and I don't know why they don't do it anymore. It's because now when they make a pilot, they just bury it, and they lose all the money, and the audience doesn't get to see it. Really a dumb way of doing things. So let me tell you what the projects are. And so I'm bringing aboard my friends who are stars in TV shows, but I'm also bringing aboard my friends who are the creators of the greatest science fiction shows ever made, Emmy winners, all sorts of folks. So let me go into the specifics a little bit, so you'll know. And the Voiceless Roar, by the way, let's just go down these projects and say what they are. And you know, and because it's really simple, but it takes money. That's the whole point. It takes money to run all of this, and we can shoot at a much lower cost than the studios and the networks. Essentially, we're making these shows and these movies for what would be essentially the catering budget on these, you know, studio projects, because their overhead is so crazy high, you know, and they just it gets more and more expensive, and they just start screwing over the actors, the writers. They're cutting their pay and starting to use artificial intelligence and all sorts of, I mean, I'm not using artificial intelligence. I'm trying to use my own intelligence at the moment, but I assure you that I am the real Mark Zickery. But so all of these projects are pro-social, not political, but like, let's come together, let's be compassionate, let's be kind, let's, you know, and that doesn't mean they don't have violence, they don't have, you know, the adventurous things that make science fiction fun. Blade Runner, from my vantage point, is a pro-social message, because Deckard goes from killing synthetics to having empathy with the synthetics, and they have empathy for him at the end, where Roy Batty saves him, and then he in turn saves you know, his lady love. So for me, that's a transition toward humanity, toward compassion, toward empathy, and that's what we need to save the world, frankly, in my personal opinion. If you disagree, that's fine, but I promise you that when you're in a community of people who care about you, regardless of politics, where they're watching out for you, they've got your back and you've got theirs, it's a much better world to live in. So that's what I stand for. So let's go down these projects, because they're all incredible. I'm dying to see all of them. So we're going to continue shooting Space Command. We have the scripts written. We're moving along. It's going great. Can't wait to share it with you. And by the way, the box set with the first 6 hours of Space Command will be done, I think, within the year, and then we'll be able to ship those box sets that some of you have ordered. So here's what's going on. We're currently shooting The Voiceless Roar. That's an independent feature that Elaine wrote and is directing, and we're both producing. It's not science fiction, Jesus. Amazing. It's basically, it's set in a small Midwestern town, modern day, and it's about a corporation that's trying to take over the town, and it's going to basically wipe out what the town has stood for all these years, and it's about a group of the townsfolk coming together to stop them. And it's basically, if you love Capra movies, if you love films that are inspiring and are set in the heartland, it doesn't have cursing, it doesn't have any, we're making family projects. So Space Command is a family project. You can watch it with your kids. Voiceless Roar is a family project. You can watch it with your kids. It's not kiddie fair, in quotes, but it's something like, well, when we all watch those great shows together, you know, it's you're not going to be worried that you're going to see, you know, naked Klingons having sex, or people using bad language. You know, it's we're very cognizant of our audience, and we don't write down to our audience, but we write including our audience. You know, the audience is as intelligent as we are, or more so. But you know, and I've had heads of networks say to me, you know, the audience is dumb, they're not like us. I totally disagree. But I think it's fair to make something that you can watch with your family. I think it's fair to not insult the beliefs of your audience. You know, and again, as long as it's compassionate. So it's not for me to say which religion is the true religion, if any. It's up to me to welcome people in, to have courtesy, to have kindness, to have compassion, to have all these things. So, okay, so Voiceless Roar. So the townspeople come together, and it stars many of our Space Command stars. So Doug Jones is in it. Armin Shimmerman, my dear friend from DS9 and Buffy, is in it as well. Aaron Gaffey stars in it. He's Captain Matt Kemmer, who you'll see in Space Command Forgiveness and Ripple Effect and many of our other projects. And Barbara Bain, the great Barbara Bain from Mission Impossible and Space 99, is in it. And Andra Lene, who plays the Prophet in the upcoming episode of Space Command Forgiveness that we're in post-production on now. So it's a wonderful, wonderful project. I love it dearly, and Elaine's doing a great job. So far, we've shot 3 days. We're shooting 2 more days at a location, at a house here in LA on Saturday and Sunday. And I'm raising money because, again, if the money stops, everything stops. We have to pull the plug on shooting. We have to pull the plug on post-production. We have to close down the physical studio. So the money mustn't stop. If you want to buy more shares of Space Command or want to buy in on the Showrunners Network, markzickery@gmail.com. Email me, markzickery@gmail.com, and I mean, like, immediately, because right now we want to shoot on the weekend, but we don't have all the money we need, and we want to make sure that we have the money to pay our people and to do the things we need to do. And the more the money is what makes the machine go. And I'm grateful to everyone who gives us anything, but money is really the bottom line. And again, what would cost the networks millions costs us thousands, but it's still, it's still money. And you have to feed your crew, you have to feed your cast, and all of those things. And it can't be stuff with expiration dates from like 2022 or 1999. Are you sure this tuna's okay? Yeah, well, I'm tiptoe away. No. So, but it's okay. So that's Voiceless Roar. It's a feature, 2-hour feature, and quite wonderful. And our plan is to shoot the entire film this year, in several days at each month, and then by the end of the year we'll have it done. And phenomenal and wonderful. And we're using our regular team. Massimiliano Trevis is our DP. Cesar Reyes is our production designer and set guy. The wonderful Dave Edison is our editor, of course. And, the wonderful Inez de los Santos is our line producer, etc., and right-hand person. Steve Huff is doing men of all trades. He's doing a bunch of stuff, etc. Just our wonderful people who have become our family. Adam Sartain, many others. They'll all be there. And again, if you're an investor, you can come and be on set. You could even play a townsperson, and that would be great because we need extras on set. So, and we love having you there. We love having you there. So, okay, that's the first one. Now, here's the 5 shows. Okay, here we go. It's really cool. Fugitive Space. Fugitive Space is set in the near future. We discovered an alien planet with a sentient race. They're as intelligent as we are, but they're 8-foot-tall jellyfish. And they communicate via chromatophores, lights in their bodies, so they don't speak. And they're poisonous. If you touch them, you die. Okay? And they breathe methane. They're from a methane world. And what we've worked out with them is a plan to trade our worst prisoners for their worst prisoners, so that our prisoners go to their world, our killers and rapists and all that stuff go to their world, and they can't escape because it's a methane atmosphere. Their worst prisoners come to our world, to a prison here, because they can't breathe oxygen, and so these are escape-proof prisons. Now, there's a space station midway built by both races where we have the prisoner exchange, and at that space station, a prison break erupts, and it's alien prisoners, alien guards, human prisoners, human guards, all trying to survive in the midst of all of this. And it's a phenomenal story with practical creatures augmented by CG and a phenomenal cast. My friend Michael Harney from Orange is the New Black, on and on. I mean, we're plugging our cast in now. And but it's designed by the project's designed by Ian McCaig, who designed Darth Maul and Queen Amidala. The great William Stout, who designed Masters of the Universe. The movie is aboard as a concept designer. It's just going to be cool and wonderful. And then what we discover is there's a secret plan that's going to decimate the people on Earth, but not everybody. The rich people are going to be fine. The poor people are going to be shipped out to be part of an alien war. And that's the secret. And so we have to stop that. We have to stop that. And we also have to get their political prisoners out of their Guantanamo here on Earth to help us fight their own kind and stop the people of Earth, the underprivileged, the underserved, the ignored, I'm always fascinated writing about people who don't count, quote unquote, because anything can be done to them. And so this is very much about the industrial military prison complex, and it's a very fun ride. It's if you loved Aliens, that's really the template, because it's got action, it's got sweet love story, it's got great characters, it's got humor, it's just the whole 9 yards. I'm chomping at the bit. So it's co-written. It's written by me. But the people I've reached out to bring aboard and co-create the series with are Mark Fergus and Hawk Ostby. They developed The Expanse for television. They were the showrunners on that show, along with Naren Shankar, and they're phenomenal. They wrote the movie Children of Men. They wrote the movie Iron Man. Brilliant guys, and so they're aboard with me. Interestingly enough, Mark Fergus read The Twilight Zone Companion when he was a teenager, and that's what convinced him to become a writer, producer in TV. So when we met, it was just like, man, this is like, we became fast friends. He's an amazing guy, and can't wait for that. So that's Fugitive Space. Sweet Haven, and I've also reached out to David Ajala, by the way, to play the lead in Fugitive Space, the human lead, and it's really cool, and I can't wait. So the next one is Sweet Haven. Now, by the way, the 2-hour pilots are written, so Fugitive Space is written, Sweet Haven is written. That one I've co-created with my friend Rockney O'Bannon. He created Farscape, Alien Nation, Defiance, Sequest, Cult. He's the executive producer on Evil. Phenomenal guy. We both met on the remake of the Twilight Zone series that I wrote for, and he was a story editor on back. And then he did Alien Nation. He wrote that right back in the day, and we've been very, very good friends ever since. And so we came up with an idea. This is an idea we actually came up with before the pandemic, but we thought it'd be super fun, which is what if there was a bioengineered disease that got out of hand and killed everyone in the world under 60. And so the people 60 and above have to figure out how to keep the human race going when they can't reproduce. It's a super fun idea. And the cool part also is that although they don't fall ill, they're carriers of the disease. So if they encounter anybody under 60, and it's basically a biological marker, it's there's this wiggle room within that line, but if they encounter anyone under 60, they'll kill them. They'll catch the disease that these guys are carriers of, like Typhoid Mary. And so Rock and I laid out the first episode. We laid out the first season. Then Elaine and I co-wrote the script with Rock giving us notes. And then we started casting it, and we've had actually 2 table reads of the script so far. And this cast is such a dream cast, my God! And by the way, another thing that was part of that idea was I live in West Hollywood, which is a gay town, and it's got Russian immigrants, it's got all sorts of people, but it had a very large gay contingent. And during the AIDS crisis, Elaine and I would see people we knew, basically fade away and die in a horrible fashion. Many people in our community were killed, and that was a disease. See, most diseases, if you're older, you're more vulnerable. COVID hit old people hard, and children are hit hard as well. But usually it's not people in the prime of their life who are the most vulnerable. But AIDS was different. AIDS, these really, people in the prime of their life, in great physical condition, many of them, it just stripped them away to bare bones, and whereas older people, tended not to be as vulnerable in terms of just not being as active sexually or whatever. So, so it was a horrible disease. But the idea of a disease that strikes younger people, I think that planted the seed of it in my mind. So basically, we've written the pilot script, and we've had 2 table reads via, via Zoom. And here's the cast, and you will just, love this. Here's the cast. So it's got Michael Harney of Orange is the New Black, who played Jack Cameron's dad in Space Command, and he plays twins, interestingly enough. He plays a cop and his brother who went down a dark road. And because my physical trainer is an identical twin, and his brother was very different from him. And so that's, again, I'm not drawing upon the terrible cliche of identical twins. I'm actually drawing upon what I've observed in real life, the differences. And then also in Sweet Haven, it's called Sweet Haven, are Robert Picardo, Robert Picardo, whom you know from Star Trek Voyager, from Stargate Atlantis, from the upcoming Starfleet Academy. Additionally, we have Veronica Cartwright from Alien and the Birds and Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Twilight Zone. We have Gates McFadden from Star Trek Next Gen and Picard. We've got Barbara Bain again from Mission Impossible Space 1999. We've got Marta Kristen from Lost in Space. She's amazing and wonderful. And we have Francois Chow from The Expanse and The Penguin, and James Hong from Blade Runner, Big Trouble in Little China. And I'm talking to George Takei about also being in Sweet Haven as well. Ethan Phillips is going to be in it. I'm hoping I can get Walter Koenig, because we've been talking forever about me casting him in something, and I would love to. So that's Sweet Haven. Now, the third series in this incredible slate, and again, it's $7,500 for a share in this. Can you imagine when Star Trek initially came out? If Gene Roddenberry had come on TV and said, if you want to buy shares in Star Trek, you can have a percentage of our profits. It's like, holy cats! And also to just be able to say, I'm part of Star Trek. By the way, if you buy 15 shares in Showrunners Network, and some of you have that capability, it's a little over $100,000. You get an executive producer credit on all of these projects, and if you're wanting to build a career in TV or film, that's invaluable, because that's IMDb. That'll be on Internet Movie Database. That'll be on the show. So the real marker of whether you're a real deal in Hollywood, and I tell people this all the time, is, you'll meet a lot of phonies in Hollywood, of course. 99% of the people you meet who say they're producers, who say they're actors, who say they're directors, who say they're writers, aren't. They've never gotten anything made. They never will get anything made, or maybe they get little things getting made, but they have no momentum to their careers. The way you can tell, and this is not me being snobbish. This is just, I always warn people to avoid people who claim to be like big movers and shakers in Hollywood. The way you can find out, and this is true in books as well, the way you can find out who's real versus who's not is you simply say, have you ever done anything I would have heard of? Now, for me, I can say, well, yeah, Smurfs, He-Man, Super Friends, Real Ghostbusters, Sliders, Friday the 13th series, Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, Sliders, blah, it's the Space Precinct, for God's sake, The Littles, Puppy's Further Adventure, The Incredible Hulk, there's a lot of my credits I don't go into, Captain EO, etc. And I also did a storyline for Dungeons and Dragons that I'm not credited on, because I'd come up with this idea, and Michael Reeves was writing for the show, and he needed an idea, and he liked that one, and he said, can he have it? And I said, sure. And I didn't need to get credit or payment or anything, because we were pals, so anyway, I digress, which that's what this shirt should say. It shouldn't say alien, it should say I digress. But okay, but yes, so $7,500 you can buy into Showrunners Network, $7,500 you can buy into Space Command, and for 15 shares you can get an executive producer credit on the Showrunners Network, all the projects that we do. So that's an amazing deal, because then when someone says, have you done anything I would have heard of, you've done all these things, and you're partnered with us and partnered with the people who are making these incredible projects. So, okay, so now we go to magic time. That's, some years ago I had this idea. What if all the machines in the world stopped running and guns stopped working and magic came back, and some people would turn into the archetypal mythical creatures they were by their nature. Some people would get magical abilities, but most people would just stay human. And it was this really fun, dystopic, modern-day fantasy, science fiction idea. And Elena and I wrote it as a pilot. I wrote roles for Armin Shimmerman, for my friend Christina Moses, who stars in A Million Little Things, and was Sulu's daughter in World Enough and Time, the Star Trek episode I did that you can watch on Mr. Sci-Fi. And it got optioned 8 times. And by option, that's where a studio or a production company essentially leases it for like a year or 2 years, and they try to set it up. And if it doesn't get set up as a production, as a project, then it reverts to you. So it was optioned by Netter Digital, who did Babylon 5, was not optioned by the Henson Company, many others. But I own it. And so then sold as a trilogy of novels to HarperCollins. It hit the bestseller list, and now we're going to do it as a series. So it's, as I said, it's going to star Armin Shimmerman, Christina Moses. I have a role in mind for Doug Jones that I'm going to talk to him about. It's a really great role, and I'll basically be casting it with all these wonderful actors that I'm working with now, and so that's that one, and again, the script's completely written, and all of these things we can shoot at our studio. Now, here's a project that's also really cool, and people's eyes get wide when they hear about this one. It's called Rod Serling's After Twilight. Now, this is incredibly cool. As you know, I'm the writer of the Twilight Zone Companion. I produced the Twilight Zone Blu-ray set. I'm Mr. Twilight Zone. And Rod Serling's 100th birthday is coming on Christmas Day. Had he lived, he sadly died at 50. But I'm doing interviews with Anne Serling, Rod's daughter, who wrote a wonderful memoir about her dad. So you may be seeing us on Good Morning America or any of these other shows, radio, TV shows. We just did an interview with People, etc. Forbes is going to be interviewing us. So of course, I know Twilight Zone backward and forward, and I've been rather dismayed by the recent iterations of the Twilight Zone TV show. They just aren't not done as well as I think they should be. It's kind of hit and miss, and what they're missing, of course, is Rod Serling himself, and that's, you know, Rod's gone. But here's the cool thing: this project is called Rod Serling's After Twilight. Now, Rod's first big success was on a TV show he wrote called Patterns, won him his first Emmy, and put him on the map. And then he did Requiem for a Heavyweight in 1957. Patterns aired in 55 or 56. And Rod was on his way, and he was the top paid and most famous writer in television, late 50s, early 60s. And so he'd previously worked on a typewriter, but now they had the money to hire an assistant. He dictated everything he wrote from 1957 on into a recorder, and then his secretary would type it up, and then he'd make hand corrections. That's how he wrote. So we'd actually lounge by his Olympic-sized pool, and the guest house had been converted into his office. And this is a wonderful house in Pacific Palisades that's still there. And I spent a lot of time in there when I was working on the Twilight Zone Companion. I started that 2 years after Rod's death, so Carol Serling was still there, his dog was still there, everything, the 6 Emmys, the 3 Hugo Awards, it was phenomenal. His scrapbooks, his files, everything. It was great. But so Rod would lounge by a swimming pool, and he used to dictate scripts and letters and speeches and everything. And as you know, and he used to joke that he was the only writer who could write a script and get a tan at the same time. And So Rod could write very, very fast, and his voice, of course, his style was uniquely his, as we all know, that wonderful Rod Serling way of speaking that was the way he spoke all the time. You know, whether it was a speech or a letter or a script or anything, Rod telling a joke. But all of these dictation materials, these dictation belts, because this is before cassettes, they were thought lost. All of that amazing material. And then they found 1,000 of them in recent years, and now they have digitized those recordings. And my plan is to do a new show that Rod Serling himself narrates from that material, because Rod is talking about all the issues he talked about in Twilight Zone. Many of these things have never been heard, never been exposed to the public, all of them, basically. So it'd be Rod talking about race, about politics, about issues of the day, about humanity, about survival, about life and death and love, all the things that Rod cared about and we care about. And totalitarianism, dictatorship, censorship, conformity, all of the rights of the disabled. So we're going to be getting all of that material from these audios and to have Rod narrate it. But more than that, we're going to take scripts that Rod wrote that were never made, scripts that he wrote for Night Gallery that were never made, that have reverted back to the family, scripts that Rod wrote in the 50s that have not been seen since the days of live TV. These amazing, amazing scripts. He wrote a 2-hour pilot for Twilight Zone, or it was a 1-hour pilot, called The Happy Place, that I would love to film. Amazing script. And so it would be a show narrated by Serling, consisting of great Serling scripts that have never been seen by anybody around now. Okay, if you were watching TV in the 50s, you might have caught some of this stuff, but that not all of it. Not all of it's been, it's a treasure trove. Plus, we'll be doing unmade scripts by some of the other great writers of Twilight Zone, Matheson, Beaumont, George Clayton Johnson. Just seeing what's available. But more than that, we'll be making scripts from the writers since as well. So, for instance, I wrote a script when they brought Twilight Zone back in the late 80s. I wrote a script for them. And a week before prep, it's called Knife Through the Veil. It was going to be directed by Douglas Hayes, who was the great director of Twilight Zone, Eye of the Beholder, The After Hours, The Howling Man, amazing, amazing, talented man, phenomenal. And he was a pal, and he was going to direct the script. And a week before prep, CBS pulled the plug. The censors pulled the plug because they said this is too hard-edged for television. They couldn't do it. And it's about justice. It's about retribution. It's about grief. It's an amazing script. And so I'm going to shoot that as one of the episodes. And it's going to star my friend Armin Shimmerman. I wrote a role for him. Katie Sackhoff has read the script and said that she'd want to play the lead. And this was some time ago, so I have to revisit that now. But so I'm talking to Rod's family. I'm talking to his daughters Anne and Jody and their representative about getting the rights to do this show. Now that hasn't come through yet, but they know me. They've known me for close to 50 years, and they trust me, and I certainly will not betray that trust in any way, shape, or form. But Rod is, to me, a living presence, and God, if we need Rod Serling's point of view now more than ever, and again, that's not a political statement, but he was a giant. He was television's Leonardo da Vinci, if you will, just a genius and one of a kind. We will not see his like again. And basically all the people who are running TV now, all the showrunners, Ron Moore and Brandon Braga and everybody, all of us, David Chase, on and on, Matt Weiner from Mad Men, we are all modeling ourselves on Rod Serling. We are all taking lessons from Rod, just as Gene Roddenberry did, just as every showrunner, J. Michael Straczynski, Rod is our touchstone. Rod is our model, because he was the first showrunner who was a writer, who ran network TV, who ran his own show. The buck stopped with him, and that's phenomenal. And I want to bring all that Serling material, those incredible scripts, back where we can see them, we can share them, and we can hear Rod's wonderful voice again, speaking from the heart, as he always did. This is a man who was not playing the political game. He was not, studio politics is what I'm talking about. He was not a man who kept his opinion to himself, and that he took his licks from being that outspoken, but he was a man of great principle and enormous talent. And so that's Rod Serling's After Twilight. Now then, the next series, as part of the Showrunners Network, $7,500 a share, is Dante Station. Now when I was a student at UCLA, I went to UCLA as an art major, painting, sculpture, graphic arts. It was a clerical error. I never applied for that major or the art department, the art school of UCLA. I applied to UCLA for a different major, the College of Layer Sciences, an undeclared major, and I got my paperwork back, and I was a painting, sculpture, graphic arts major in the College of Fine Arts. And so, fortunately, I was trying to figure out whether I would be a visual artist or a writer. I had skills in both, and so I thought, well, this is the hand of fate. I'll go and I'll get my degree in art, which is what I did. But someday there'll be a knock on the door, and they'll take my degree back, or it'll be the guy who got my fate, who was supposed to be an artist, who ended up being a CPA, and he'll mete out justice as he sees it. So God knows. But in the meantime, so I was painting, sculpting, doing graphic arts, all that stuff when I was a teenager, and in fact, I did a fake. Let's see if it's here. Is it here? Yes, it's right up here. They used to do special authors issues of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. So I did, when I was in my early 20s, I did one of me. So you can see the Twilight Zone clock up there. So I painted this, I think, when I was around 21, something like that. But this was actually a fake issue, the Mark Zickery issue of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. And I actually sent a photo of this to them and they ran it in their magazine. But they did the Ray Bradbury issue and the Harlan Ellison issue, and this was my projection for the future. So, you know, but then I had gallery shows when I was a teenager and all that. But when I was 19, I went to the Clarion Writers Workshop, sold my first short story to Damon Knight, the author of To Serve Man, and I was off and running. And I came back, finished my 2 years at UCLA, but by then I knew I'd be a writer, producer, working in television. That was my goal. So, but when I came back from Clarion, the great Theodore Sturgeon was teaching a class, an adult education class at UCLA. Now, Ted Sturgeon, this is one of Ted's books, so let's not have that fall over. This is one of Ted's books, and has a great cover by the great Joe Magnani, who was Ray Bradbury's great artist. And there's no picture of Ted in here, otherwise I would show it to you. But Ted Sturgeon had written for Star Trek. He wrote Amok Time and Shore Leave, and he'd written phenomenal short stories and novels. One of the giants of science fiction. He was teaching an adult education class. Well, as an undergrad, I was not allowed to take the adult education classes. But I thought, well, hell with that. I'm not going to lose this opportunity to be taught by Ted Sturgeon. You know, that would be, that would be a crime to miss out on Ted. So I took the class, and we became fast friends. He was a great mentor, a great soul. And my photo of Ted actually appears as his author's photo on 2 of his books, which was a great honor. And but his teaching assistant was a kid who had come from Clarion, who'd gone to Clarion 3 years before me, and when Ted had been teaching it, and so his name was Michael Reeves, and he was already writing novels and short stories and selling them, and writing for television, writing animation in television, and he and I hit it off. He was 5 years older than me. He was very, very sarcastic but sweet. He had a good heart, but a very, very biting tongue, and but very talented, very, very talented. And we became fast friends. And he asked if I wanted to write TV, and if I wanted to co-write a script of an animated show with him. He made me the invitation once I graduated college, and I said yes, absolutely. And so the first script we wrote was an episode of what was called Space Stars finale, and it starred Space Ghost, if you remember Space Ghost, and it went fine, it went great. And then Smurfs was just starting up, so we wrote an episode of Smurfs together, and then it was very clear I could write those scripts on my own, so I started writing on my own for Smurfs and He-Man and Super Friends and Real Ghostbusters, and on and on and on and on and on and on and on. We were the gods of animation, Michael and I. We were writing for all the animation companies, Hanna-Barbera, Deke, Marvel, Ruby Spears, whoever was around, Filmation, for God's sake. We wrote for Black Star, which we loved doing. I think Michael and I wrote all of those episodes, and sometimes we'd still collaborate, but we were both having very, very good careers on our own as well, and we were dear friends. And so Michael, his career, he was primarily stayed in animation, also writing novels. He had a few live action credits. He wrote for Star Trek Next Gen. I helped him sell a story to Sliders. He wrote a script for Sliders, and but mainly he was focusing on animation. So he was the story editor on Batman the Animated Series, and he won an Emmy for that. And deservedly. It was a landmark show. He actually wanted me to write one, and I turned him down because I was out of animation by then. But in retrospect, I should have. I should have said yes. But I was looking down my nose and being an asshole. Cover your ears, kids. I didn't mean to curse. But okay. But then Michael and I, we were very, very good friends, really good friends. And so when I found out about Star Trek New Voyages, Michael had come up with this great Sulu idea back when they were going to bring Star Trek back as a TV show in the 70s. And I called him and I said, hey, you want to do that story? And he said, yeah, you bet. So I reached out to the boys in upstate New York who were doing Star Trek New Voyages. So Michael and I co-wrote World Enough and Time, and I directed and executive produced it. And I said to Michael, we were going to write this full out as if we were writing for a network show. We were not going to step back from that ambition at all, and that's what we did. And as I said, it was nominated for the Hugo and Nebula, won the TV Guide Award. And then Michael, at the same time, was a producer writing scripts on Gargoyles. He stayed the god of animation. I moved on to be whatever I am now. But Michael was just an amazing guy, and so he and I created a show together because. When I wrote for Space Precinct, I thought it was a great idea. A cop on an alien planet solving crimes. I thought that was a really interesting idea, but I thought they really dropped the ball on it. It wasn't the great show it could have been. And at the time, I was hanging out with a friend of mine who was a homicide cop here in LA. I wrote a spec homicide script that accomplished a lot for me. It was a great script. And so I thought, okay, I said to Michael, let's create a show about a New York homicide cop who's coming off a very bad divorce, and he's got custody of his daughter. His wife is a wanted fugitive. She's a terrorist, and the daughter is incredibly rebellious. She's 14 years old, and he is transferred to. He wants a new start, and he gets transferred to a homicide division on a mining colony near the core of the galaxy, and so he. Essentially is solving not just human homicides but alien homicides as well. And this base, it's a city that's a shaft city. It's because it's so near the center of the galaxy. It's a very high radiation environment, so the entire city is like the shaft city. So if you can imagine a science fiction Casablanca at in space filled with aliens from every corner of the galaxy, that's what he's got. And his daughter becomes part of this underground culture of lost kids, and they have sussed out a big secret about this planet and these aliens who've sort of gone in decline, like the American Indians. And she's part of that mystery. And meantime, her dad is solving all these crimes, and ultimately the mystery and the crimes dovetail. And it's called Dante Station, and Michael and I co-created it. We worked up a whole series Bible on it and everything, and with concept sketches from the guys who designed the aliens on Babylon 5. And I'm at Comic-Con recently, I ran into Jerry O'Connell, who starred in Sliders. He looks terrific, and he was, you can watch the video on Mr. Sci-Fi where I ran into him, and he's saying to everyone, this is the best boss I ever had. So we're going to get together for lunch, and I'm going to offer him the lead in Dante Station to play the homicide cop, because I think Jerry is a wonderful actor and a wonderful person, and I think he deserves a role that's got some meat on the bone, that isn't just something. I think he deserves better than he's gotten, frankly. I mean, he's successful. He's married to Rebecca Romaine of Star Trek, of Strange New Worlds, but I'm going to pitch him this as to play the lead, and I certainly hope he says yes, because that would be so fun, so fun. So now then, as a backup, so those are the series, the 5 shows for the Showrunners Network and Elaine's feature. That's what they are. Now, for any reason any of these drops out, if, for instance, I can't get certain rights, or I can't... Now, with the exception of Rod Serling's After Twilight, I own all of these projects, so there's no impediment to shooting them. And I have my own studio. So the only thing that I need is the funds to make this. And then we start putting those... And by the way, what we're going to do with them... With Space Command, we're making an entire season, and we're going to sell that season, so I don't see any hindrances to that happening. With the Showrunners Network, we're not going to shoot the entire seasons of these shows. It's just too expensive. What we're going to do is shoot the 2-hour backdoor pilots of these shows and market them. And if a big streamer or a big network wants to buy them and give us a season green light or a several season green light, terrific, we're off and running. If not, we'll sell them as movies, and that's how they'll make back their money with a profit. That's the plan. So if there's any bumps along the road on any of those 5 series, I have another series I'm going to plug in, and I came up with this idea. I was very interested in the notion, with Jeffrey Epstein and Trump and a lot of these, and you could even say Bill Clinton, some of these rich guys who feel that they can get away with anything with no consequences, and often do. I was interested in that wealthy class of totally entitled men, and I've also always been very interested in serial killers and crime stories. There was an idea I came up with a long time ago, actually before I was even a professional writer, to tell you how old this idea was, the germ of it. I actually wrote up a series Bible back then when I was writing the Twilight Zone Companion, and I actually got notes on it from Buck Houghton, the producer of the first 3 seasons of Twilight Zone. That's how old this idea was, the germ of it. And the germ of this idea was, what if you had a killer who was selecting someone to frame for the murder he committed before he committed the murder? And because it's very easy to frame someone if you choose them judiciously, because you can plant evidence that makes it an open and shut case. So that was the germ of that back then. But now, Marigold is a show. Let me tell you what it is. It's a miniseries. It's an 8-hour miniseries. And the basic premise is that you have a very wealthy, entitled guy whose dad was English, whose mom is French. He's multilingual, and the show takes place in a number of different European countries. Now, he's a huge art benefactor, like the Sackler family, the opioid guys. They're benefactors in art. They spend millions of dollars, and they have wings of different art museums named after them, and to kind of legitimize themselves. So this guy, Marigold, he goes around endowing all these art museums throughout Europe and talking about art and talking about the notion of creating a masterpiece, and how the artists create masterpieces and how they create a body of work, and how that body of work can have a beginning, middle, and end and be perfect in its shape. And unbeknownst to these art galleries that he's giving these talks to and spending and befitting millions of dollars and benefiting them with it, he's actually talking about his own body of work and his own masterpiece, which he is engaged in creating. But he's a serial killer. And what he's doing is, in each country, he's killing somebody, but he doesn't just select his victim. He selects the person he's going to frame for the murder. And in some cases, these are people who were known to the murdered person, like they were involved in a very stormy relationship. Sometimes it's perfect strangers. They're very different kinds of people. But what he's done is, every one of these murders, it's an open and shut case for the cops. So, for instance, you're sleeping, the cops, break down your door, they grab you, and they say, well, you murdered this person. And it's like, what do you mean? I was sleeping. Well, no, they saw your car, they got your license plate, your DNA is on the murder weapon, whatever, right? Open and shut case. So in all these European countries, there are people sitting, rotting away in prison who are totally innocent because this guy killed all these women. But meantime, no one has connected the dots, because if there's a murder that's open and shut case in Portugal, then there's someone else in France, who has an open and shut case. They're not going to connect the dots and see that someone is going through all these different countries murdering people. There's no way to track them. So what happens in Marigold is, one of these people, a woman, she essentially susses out, she's reading the newspapers, and she realizes she's been framed for one of these crimes. She realizes what's going on, but she realizes that no one's going to believe her because it's an open and shut case. She was convicted without an alibi. And so she breaks out of prison and starts getting the other people who are being framed out of their situations to basically form a group to track this guy, figure out who he is, and bring him to justice, because that's the only way anyone's ever going to believe them. But the fascinating thing is, they don't know each other, and they're from very different classes, very different ethnicities, races, everything. In some cases, they don't even speak each other's languages, and yet they've got to be there for each other. They've got to work together. If one of them falls, they all fall. And meantime, there's a female cop from Interpol who's on the hunt, who's chasing them. But as she begins to look at the cases, she begins to suspect that they may be innocent and that there may be someone who's the guilty party. And at the same time, our killer starts to realize that he's not just the predator, he's the prey now, but he has unlimited resources to fight back. And so that's the miniseries. And there's an open door at the end of it where it can continue on. And so in terms of that, Elaine and I have outlined it. It's fully outlined. As you know, my degree is in painting, sculpture, graphic arts. I've got a very deep knowledge of art history. So we're dealing with Van Gogh and Da Vinci and Goya and even H.R. Giger in this storyline. And phenomenal show. So when we were in London recently, I met with Stephen Hopkins, who's the director who did Predator 2. He was executive producer and director of 24. He is now aboard, the Subversive Project, the Lord Peter Hayne Project, but I've just sent him the outline for Marigold, and if he responds to it, as I think he will, then he'll be brought aboard to direct that. He's based in Europe and in the States, and also I'm going to reach out to Christina Chong, my friend from Strange New Worlds, to see if she might want to play the lead, the woman who's framed for a murder she didn't commit. And so this is very, very, very exciting. And again, we'll see, but again, $7,500 shares are what fuel all of this. I want to turn on my TV and see all these things, and you probably do too. So if you've got change falling into your couch cushions, or if you're tripping over big stacks of cash, or even medium-sized stacks of cash in your living room, or if you've got some money that you want to spend on something that's meaningful. And again, I can't guarantee you'll see a profit. I can't guarantee you'll see your original investment back. It is speculative. I mean, if you want a safe investment, buy an apartment building or whatever. But really, nothing's safe anymore. It's all a crapshoot in this crazy world we live in. But if you want to stand for something, if you want to come on set and be able to say, yeah, I'm a producer on this. Yeah, I get to hang out with these people. I get to be part of this. I get to be the reason it gets made. Please, markzickery@gmail.com. Email me immediately, because that's what makes it go. My plan is to shoot all of these pilots in the coming year, shoot the entire season of Space Command, shoot Elaine's feature. It's doable. I promise you it's doable. I was able to make an entire season of Sliders, and come up with DS9 for Far Beyond the Stars, and work on the novel for Magic Time, and outline and write scripts for Animorphs all at the same time. So I'm not afraid to do this stuff. And by the way, let's talk for a moment about production logistics. Here's how it works. I always knew. I'm the only writer who wrote for both Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine, the only one. And I saw that with both of them, it was the same model. But even Babylon 5 was even more clever, because at that time, a Deep Space Nine episode cost $2 million to make, over $2 million. Babylon 5 cost less than $1 million to make. Its first year pattern budget, that means per episode budget, was something like $658,000. And yet they were getting more stunts, more alien makeups, more visual effects than DS9. And I said, well, how are you able to do that? I sat down with John Copeland, the producer, and he said, other people will read a script and say it can't be done. I read a script and say, how can it be done? And they reinvented the way television was made. But essentially, Joe Straczynski and his partners, they got a warehouse up in the northern part of the valley. He used to joke that the studio executives didn't come there because there were no good restaurants in the neighborhood, and they converted it. I think, it's like an Orange Crush factory or whatever, and they converted it to sound stages, where they shot the standing sets were there, all the Babylon 5 sets, and then you'd open a door and go through, and there were the offices of the executives. And that's essentially what we have on Space Command. We have 3 sound stages in Pico Rivera, just south of LA, and they're full of spaceships and aliens and spacesuits and the whole 9 yards. We have a whole wardrobe department. And when a big science fiction TV show or movie ends, I acquire what I can of the props and sets and costumes that augment what we build from scratch. So we've got stuff from Falling Skies and Twilight Zone and Star Trek and Outland and Prometheus and Alien Covenant and Cloverfield Paradox and Ender's Game. And this adds to what we have built. So we get enormous production value out of that. And because we have standing sets, for instance, we're shooting Great Solar War now. We need to shoot a day or two with Bob Picardo, so we have standing sets. So as a result, I can call Bob and say, when are you done with Starfleet Academy? When are you going to be free? And he says, well, late November, early December. And it's great. We can get him for a day or two to come in, and we can shoot what we need to shoot. We have time. We have patience. We can do what other studios can't do, because most studios, they'll build something, they'll shoot it, they'll tear it down. They can't get those actors back because they can't rebuild the sets. They don't have the time or money. And so what they get is what they get. Or they have to budget VFX shots to reshoot. And again, that's going to cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we're much lighter on our feet. So my plan is to be in multiple productions simultaneously. And we have the studio to do it. So we have the team, we have the studio. We're going to redress our sets from Space Command to be the sets for Fugitive Space, that space station that's half alien, half human. I've actually got one of our production designers designing that now. He flew in to LA, looked at our studio with our team, looked at the sets, and now he's starting to think about, okay, how do we reconfigure those? And so with all of these projects, it'll be exactly the same way. So that's sort of the plan, okay? This is, as I say, it's a new and empowering way of making television, because the relationship is between me and you, our audience. And if you want to stand for something, if you want to be part of something exciting, if you have an aunt who's looking to do something with money, if you have a relative or a coworker or a friend, if you know someone who's a huge science fiction geek, and just wants to go to lunch with me and talk Twilight Zone, anyone who wants to invest is welcome to email me, markzickery@gmail.com, or call me, 323-363-1259. That's 323-363-1259. You'll get me. Amazing. Hello, Mark Zickery speaking. I want to invest in Space Command. That's you. I'm sorry. I don't mean to make you sound like Elmer Fudd or something. But yes, if you say I want to invest in Space Command, we'll send you the documents. You can send them back the next day. Bang, you make this happen. It's your family. It's your project. And imagine being able to say to your friends, your family, yeah, I'm part of this science fiction show that's getting made. I've got Doug Jones and Bob Picardo and Barbara Bain and all these amazing people. I mean, Ethan McDowell, our lead on Space Command, we had a worldwide talent search for 2 of our leads, and we got 7,000 inquiries, 1,200 video auditions, and we cast about 9 or 10 actors, including Ethan McDowell. At the time, he was unknown. He was from Wyoming. He was amazing and wonderful, but no one had heard of him. Now, of course, he's on Doom Patrol. He's a regular on Walking Dead. He just shot an episode of The Righteous Gemstones. He's got a career. He's living in New York, for God's sake. I mean, it was magical. It was magical, but he's still in Space Command. He's still in these projects because he loves working with us. We love working with him. There's no bullshit. There's no Hollywood nonsense. Okay, we're doing it because we love it. We're doing it. This is our present to you from our heart. And, what else can I say? I mean, if you have questions, call me or email me. And you can be part of this wonderful experience. You're part of our family anyway because you're subscribed to hopefully you subscribe to Mr. Sci-Fi. Ding the bell, comment. What you see is what you get. I've been mentored by some of the most amazing men and women that ever worked in television and film. I mean, my God, D.C. Fontana, the great Dorothy Fontana of Star Trek, David Gerrold, Harlan Ellison, Theodore Sturgeon, Guillermo del Toro. I've worked with George R.R. Martin on 2 series. So when I email him, he emails me back. It's like I've been blessed. Ray Bradbury was my mentor. I'd go over to his house once a month for over 10 years. I mean, my God. To have Ray Bradbury kiss you on the head and tell you he loves you, I'm speechless. What a great guy. What an amazing man. What a genius. I mean, these are the pillars of science fiction. I met Gene Roddenberry when I was working on Next Gen, and I crawled through Rod Serling's attic. I've had a life that I could not have dreamed of. When I was that 10-year-old boy recording Star Trek on reel-to-reel audio tape because we didn't have VCRs. When I met Nichelle Nichols when I was 10, when my mom's boyfriend Eddie Leroy was kind enough to introduce me to Nichelle Nichols, who he was a friend of before Star Trek, and I think some of you know that story. I didn't tell it until recent times because I didn't want to embarrass anyone, but they're gone now, and I can tell this story because I think it's inspiring. Eddie knew Nichelle Nichols before Star Trek, and at one point in her career, she was at a very low point, and she had to be a nude model in classes, in art or photography classes, whatever they were, and he would pick her up at night after these classes. She'd be in tears, and he would comfort her, and he would say, "Don't worry, there's better days ahead." And next thing you know, she was on Star Trek, and so he called her and he said, "Hi, Nichelle. There's this little kid I'm dating his mom, and I'd love to bring him over so he can meet you because he loves Star Trek more than anything in the world." And she said, "Yes, of course." And he drove me over there, and he knocked on the apartment door, and she opened it herself. Nichelle Nichols, my God. And she gave me a signed photo of herself, and she gave me a script. Her script, all the Uhura lines were circled. That's how she memorized them. These were mimeos. They didn't even have Xerox machines at that point. Mimeos. And I asked, "Do you have any more of these?" And she reached in her wastebasket and pulled out 5 more scripts, and I still have those scripts. And 50 years later, when I shot with Nichelle Nichols on Space Command, I brought that scrapbook I'd kept of her, the letters she'd written me, the photos she'd signed. I brought that scrapbook when we were filming Space Command 50 years later, and more. And we sat looking through that scrapbook, and she was so amazed, and she signed that scrapbook to me that day. And so if I haven't had a blessed life between that and marrying Elaine, meeting her when I was 20, Elaine and I have been together 48 years, married 47. She's the best part of every day. We write and direct and produce together. I mean, I'm living the most blessed life, and it's thanks to you guys, because you've enjoyed and benefited and loved what I've created over these. This year marks my 50th anniversary as a professional writer. I had a radio play air on KPFK when I was 18, but that wasn't a paid gig, so I don't view that as a professional gig. You can watch that audio play on Mr. Sci-Fi. It's called Lobotomy, so just type Lobotomy in the search bar, and you can find the first audio play that I wrote, directed, produced, acted in. So, and it's a parody of science fiction conventions and science fiction movies and TV shows. Really fun. Lobotomy. But I sold my first short story at 19, so that's what I count. This is my 50th year as a professional writer, and my God, thanks to you guys, I've lived the dream. I really have. And I was able to cross through that glass of the TV screen and enter the other side, and it's been magic ever since. So thank you, all of you. And if you want to invest in Space Commander, the Showrunners Network, please do. And you make it happen. You make the magic. And I will be eternally grateful. And I will be here again on Mr. Sci-Fi, and you can subscribe and punch the bell and all that. But we're going to be talking about the history of science fiction. We're going to be talking about more books from my English trip. And we're going to be sharing all of the adventure and the journey with you, because you live in my heart. And I am the same as you. I'm a science fiction fan. I'm just a little boy who longed for something grand, something magical in my life. And Star Trek and Outer Limits and Twilight Zone and all these books you see behind you, they filled that hole in my heart. And I am forever, forever grateful. So we'll talk again soon, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye.